When I first started working here as children's director, one of the very first things I noticed was how serious this church is about its coffee. You don't just serve coffee after church, you actually grind the coffee beans every single Sunday to brew that fresh cup of hot deliciousness. It wasn't long before I realized coffee was important to the staff too, because we have to have coffee every day of the week. Have you ever thought about what it takes to drink that cup of coffee though? I sort of had an idea of what it took, but I decided to investigate this a little bit more. And this is what I found out. There are a few methods of planting coffee seeds. In some areas of the world, they dig a hole and plant about 20 seeds in that hole, and about 50% of them sprout. In Brazil, however, they found the most effective way was to raise seedlings in a nursery, and when they plant them, they are intercropped with other food crops such as corn, beans, or rice during the first few years of the plant's growth. In addition, soil and climate are important to the growth of the coffee plant. One thing I learned is that growing a coffee plant is a long-term and very labor-intensive commitment to the land and the crop. From seed, it takes an average of 3 to 5 years to grow fruit. Each fruit contains 2 coffee seeds or beans. A healthy tree produces about 4,000 beans, which equals 1 pound of roasted coffee. It made me really appreciate the efforts a farmer takes to provide this 1 cup of coffee I enjoy. In some ways, we as a church family are similar to this. Discipleship and spiritual formation is a long-term and can be very intensive commitment to God and to others. And the intercropped idea made me think of how disciples and spiritual formation has big benefits with all generations intermixed together. Recently, the RCA's restructuring team presented a report in which they are focusing on discipleship and spiritual formation. This is super exciting, especially if we look at this in all the generations together. And thinking about this mission, plus our own mission and vision, I can't help but wonder what this means for us and our church. As church leaders, we've been looking at some statistics. In 1976, only 14% of young adults claimed to be affiliated with any religion. In 2021, that percentage rose to 43%. As church leaders, we are asking, how can we change this trajectory of a disappearing faith in Jesus Christ? What are we missing? What must change to truly and intentionally disciple every generation in our church, as Scripture calls us, starting with children? We continue to process the research and working through what this could mean for us as a church. Last year, Barna Group completed a study focused on children's ministry with some crucial results about the discipleship journey. They found that it is not enough for a child to be involved in the children's ministry in their church to engage in formulative practices and meaningful characteristics of a disciple. We are at the perfect spot to create some radical yet simple and fundamental changes on how we have viewed discipleship and spiritual formation in our church. Over the past several years in our church history, we have created some great age-directed programs, but these programs have created relationship silos. While age-appropriate teaching is very appropriate at times, we have not done enough to create an environment in our churches and our denomination to pass on the faith while also allowing the children to teach and strengthen our own faith and spiritual formation. This concept of all generations going through discipleship and spiritual formation together, a model the Bible has clearly given us, is definitely something we can improve on. Some churches have corporate worship, but that is planned and geared for adults almost all of the time. Kids can still learn from this to some degree, but imagine what this could look like in our church if we intentionally organized and planned everything we do together in our church with the goal of generations growing together in discipleship and spiritual formation. Not only children with their parents and grandparents, but the entire church body intentionally growing in discipleship and spiritual formation. Intentional depth of these things could radically impact our church moving forward, and we would welcome and invite you to sit down, grab a cup of coffee or tea or water or whatever your preference, and have some intentional conversations about what intentional intergenerational discipleship and spiritual formation could look like. Now go grab your cup of coffee, my friends.